Sign-in sheets. I don't have my sign-in sheet. All right, we're going to get started here this morning. We have our sign-in sheets here. If you want to go to heaven, put your name down on there, and we'll see what we can do to get you there. We are forward to a good program today. I see we have our guest speaker of the hour, Brother Edward Eldridge, in our audience. Looking forward to hearing you preach today. It'd be nice to hear some good preaching for a change. So we're really glad to have you. Really good to have you here. Some different preaching, maybe that way. Yeah, just a little different, All right, glad to have everyone here. We are bringing to an end, Brother Eldridge, our study we've been doing on heaven. They've been studying. I was asked to study my book on heaven. And so we've been going through those lessons, and this is the concluding lesson, although we do have one more Sunday. Next Sunday will be the final Sunday, and I've got something a little special, a little different that I'm going to do in the class next Sunday. So please hope that you will come and be there. Be here with us next Sunday as well. I want to thank this class for just inviting me to teach the book, to teach these lessons. I hope they've been beneficial to you. I thank all of you who who bought the book. It was kind of nice. I appreciate that very much, and just thank you for inviting me to fill this class for the last couple of months. So it's been good. I always enjoy teaching the material. We all do a lot of things in our lives that we are proud of and that we think might be the best thing that we've done in our life sometimes. And I don't know, when the end of my days finish here on earth, it may be that the best thing I ever did was write this book. Maybe it's affected a lot of lives, and I could just tell you many stories about the things that people say to me about the book as I travel around and go places. So it's been a joy to write and a joy to teach, and I appreciate the opportunity to teach it here. You would have probably never known about the book if it had not been for my promoter. I want to thank Kathy Dowdy for promoting the book and talking to ladies about it and getting them to get copies and stuff. And I appreciate yeah, well, that's right. Sue did a lot of good promoting too. What you kind of like spreading the word. One gets it and it keeps going. So thank you all, and I appreciate the opportunity to teach today. Start in Genesis chapter 2, beginning at verse 15. And the Lord God took the man and put him into the Garden of Eden to cultivate and keep it. And the Lord commanded the man, saying, From any tree of the garden you may eat freely, but from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat, for in the day that you eat from it you will surely die. I understand that the literal Hebrew here says, dying you shall die. And we know that they did eat of that forbidden fruit, and they begin to die from that moment on. There, as we talked about, the Garden of Eden was the original heaven. Man was meant to be an eternal being. God created him that way. But it was sin that separated man from God and brought death upon all mankind. And we know that that is true, chapter 5, verse 5. And all the days of Adam lived were 930 years, and he died. And so he did not get to live that eternity here on earth. Now, I think all of us might appreciate the 930 years, but in some ways, maybe not. I don't know when, at what point, he was eligible for Social Security. I don't know. Maybe you had to hit like 700 years before you were eligible. I don't know how that worked out. So we're going to talk about dying today. Dying, it's really living, as the title goes on. I tell the little story at the front beginning of the book, and you can read that. But it's we have to. We're going to look today at what all of us will face, that is death. And to understand that those of us who have the hope of heaven, how we should look at it and how we should think about it. We all know, and this class is mainly all of us have all begun to reach that point where we realize and begin to contemplate our own mortality. We talk a little bit about to our friends and neighbors about death, and we experience and we see death quite a bit. It's really a part of it's a part of life. It's part of living is dying. Having worked with the fire department as many years as I have, I've been around death a lot. In those circumstances, I've been on the scene of a fair amount of fatalities. Had to call people I didn't know and tell them that they've lost a loved one. Been in the room a couple of times when families have had to unplug their loved one from life support systems. And so death is something that I'm fairly well acquainted with on a kind of an impersonal way. That is, most of these people I did not know personally, and but it is still, even if you don't know a person from Adam, to watch them die is a very kind of surreal kind of situation, and it is something that makes you kind of contemplate your own mortality and makes you think a little bit about death itself. So we're going to talk about that. We can't ignore the fact that we're going to die, and we all need to make sure that we make those preparations for death. And I'm not talking just about preparations for the hereafter, but we need to make the preparations for here. When death comes our way. I tell the story of actually I don't mention his name in the book. I think I call him Will in the book, but it was Hugh Williman, who was our neighbor in Cave Spring, Georgia. I was preaching there, elderly couple. Hugh was a painter all his life. That's all he ever did was get up every morning and paint, and I can't think of a worst thing to have to do all your life, to get up and paint. But he was a painter all his life, and he of course was retired when we were living next to him and his wife, and they had an older daughter that lived with them. But he would sit in that swing in the evening and just sit there. He kind of had a nice view out over the landscape, and he just seemed to be always at peace sitting in that rocking chair, that swing. Our kids were little. Our little girls were 5 and 2 or something like that. We didn't have a fence between us, and so our kids were always running over into their yard. And Hugh didn't have grandkids, so he really got to where I'd look out in that swing, and Candy or Jill would be up in his lap, one or the other, enjoying the evening. One evening, I looked over and Hugh had collapsed at his back door. I ran over. His wife came out. Ambulance was called. He went to the hospital, stayed a while, and while in the hospital, there were tests run on him, and the doctor told him your heart is failing, and you've got maybe a year or two to live. Well, and we knew they didn't go to church anywhere. I think we invited them some, but they didn't attend services. We moved away. It was kind of sad to leave them. We moved away and went over to moved to Birmingham. And after a short while, I got a call from Miss Williman, and Hugh he'd been downtown at the hardware store. He stepped out of the hardware store and fell dead on the sidewalk there downtown. And what's interesting, it was almost exactly 2 years to the day that he had been told that he had maybe a couple years left to live. So she called me and asked me if I would come and preach his funeral, which of course I did. And so trying to find out things about his life. One thing I found out is maybe why he enjoyed sitting on that swing and enjoying the peace and quiet of that. But during World War II, he was 4 years on the front lines. He fought through North Africa and then through Italy and on into Germany. For 4 years, he was just around death and the horrors of war constantly. So I think that's what maybe gave him some peace. He enjoyed that peace and quiet of the evenings. But anyway, I went and I was learning more about his life, and I asked Miss William, I said, is there anything that he requested, during his funeral, anything he wanted to say, any special things? And she looked at me and said, no, he never talked about it. How do you know you're going to die? You almost know the day of it, and you never make the first plan to die. We need to make sure that we prepare and think about death. My sweet son-in-law, Dave, 2 months or so into his treatments, called me one morning and said, Mr. Dowdy, you gonna be home? And, yeah, come on, Dave. He came over and sat down. And, he had spent the morning at the funeral home, and he handed me the paperwork he had paid for all of his funeral beforehand. We have to kind of make those plans. It makes it easier for our families, and just the thought of planning and thinking about your own death is very worthwhile. We need to think about that and to understand that that we're going to be making a great transition, and we want to be ready for it in every way that we possibly can. Having said that, we have bought our burial plots. That's as far as we've got. I do know where they're going to put me in the ground. I wanted to be as close to my mom as I could. So that will be the case. So it's just worthwhile thinking about that. We can't ignore, we can't go through a life, especially at our ages, without contemplating that occurring. When I was high school and college, I've never been much of a basketball fan, but in those days, everybody knew about Pistol Pete Maravich. Pistol Pete was in high school setting all kinds of scoring records. His dad he went to school at Louisiana State. He was drafted by the Atlanta Hawks to begin with, and I think he ended up finishing up his career with the Utah Jazz. But Pete was the most prolific shooter that there's ever been in basketball. He was he averaged his last 3 years in college. He averaged 47 points a game on an average. He scored 69 points one game against Alabama, and this was before the 3-point thing had been put into place. If he had 3-point thing in place, no telling what his numbers would be, and he still holds a lot of records. Well, in 1988, I heard about Pete's death. He had he was in the gym with a group of young men playing a little pickup game, at his church, and his minister came in, and Pete came over to talk to him, and his minister said, "Good to see you out." And Pete said, "Yeah, I haven't shot a basketball in a year, and I just need to do this." And he said, "I'm really feeling good." And he stepped back out on the basketball floor, took about 3 steps, and fell over dead. His heart had a valve that just ruptured, tore apart, and he just died instantly. And his last words were, "I'm really feeling good." What's interesting about that is that when I heard about that, I had just turned 40, and I was really feeling good. It's then when you realize, hey, I'm old enough to die. And we begin to think about our own mortality and the fact that we're not going to be here forever. We may not get, like Hugh Williman did, that 2-year warning. We don't know what's going to happen or when it's going to happen or what exactly is going to occur. But we need to enjoy life here. We need to do the things that we wanted to do because we're not going to live 930 years. We need to get, follow your dreams, chase your dreams, do the things, do the things that you wanted to do. Don't put things off. If you have goals, you got that bucket list, get out there and fill it. My old college buddy, Steve Watson, we had our 50 years of friendship coming up, and we began to talk about doing this trip. We want to go to Rome, we want to go over to Ephesus. But then he had some health issues and ended up having both hips replaced over about a year or year and a half time. So, but we made the trip. We spent on our celebrating our 50 years of friendship. We made it to Rome. Made it over to Ephesus. I enjoyed the great ruins of Ephesus, and Steve was kind of wearing out. He downtown in Rome, he tripped over a stone, a rock, and fell flat on his face like that. And I thought, oh dear, he's got these 2 hips that probably popped out of place, and how am I going to get him home? But he got back up, and we made the trip and got home, and that's been the last trip we've been able to make. His health continues to go down. But when we're together, we talk about how happy and thrilled we were that we made that trip, that we got that done. Don't put off things. Live life to the fullest. I may just be rambling on here a bit, but be patient with me. I tried to get this song in the book. Again, this was a problem we had of copyrights and stuff, so I allude to it in the book, but I wasn't able to actually get all the words to the song. This was a song by Tim McGraw that came out about that time, and it's interesting, the points that it makes. And here are the lyrics, some of them here. He said, I was in my early 40s with a lot of life before me when a moment came that stopped me on a dime. And I spent most of the next days looking at the x-rays and talking about the options and talking about sweet time. I asked him when it sank in that this might really be the end. How did it hit you when you get that kind of news? Man, what'd you do? And he said, I went skydiving. I went Rocky Mountain climbing. I went 2.7 seconds on a bull named Blue Manchu. And I loved deeper, and I spoke sweeter, and I gave forgiveness I'd been denying. And he said, someday I hope you get the chance to live like you're dying. Well, all of us need to live like we're dying. We need to not put off doing things, and even in so yeah, my mom hated old age, and she just said, getting old is not for sissies, and we know that we can't do as much maybe as we used to do, but we do have some advantages in old age. There are some advantages that God gave us. Social Security and retirement, that's a good advantage to have, and not have to get up and do the 9 to 5 thing. You be able to kind of sleep in or be able to sit on the porch and kind of enjoy life. A little thing called grandkids, that's a nice little treat that we get as senior citizens. So yeah, there's, God has a way of kind of helping us prepare to be moving on to the next world. We know that we can't do all the things that we used to do. And when we reach that point, it's kind of nice, God has kind of moved us on. One of these days, I may in this world play my last round of golf. Maybe, sweetie. I don't know for sure. I always said I want to play 18 holes and get run over by a cement truck walking home. So it's just still want to be able to enjoy the things that I enjoy doing. So just encourage you to do that, to enjoy life and enjoy the things that God wants us to do. It's kind of interesting that really there's not many accounts of people dying in the New Testament. We know that people, some died there, but there's not many accounts of dying in the New Testament era. The first apostle, James, was executed by Herod, but his death is recorded to us in 7 words, Greek words. Herod took him and he was killed with the sword. That was it. So we don't have any account of any of the other apostles' death. Dying is just kind of skipped over a little bit in the New Testament. We have just very few examples of people actually dealing with dying. One exception to that is Acts chapter 7. The death here of the first martyr, the first Christian to die, and that, of course, is Stephen. This is Acts chapter 7. Stephen is brought before the Sanhedrin, and Stephen, in making his defense, by the way, gives a great survey of the Old Testament in his speech. He just goes over and tells the whole story of the Israelites and of Jesus, the Messiah, coming. But he also came down at the end very hard on the Jews that were persecuting and put Christ to death and persecuting Christians. So verse 54 of chapter 7 says, "Now when they heard this, they were cut to the quick, and they began gnashing their teeth at him. But being full of the Holy Spirit, he gazed intently into heaven and saw the glory of God and Jesus standing at the right hand of God. And he said, Behold, I see the heavens open, and the Son of Man standing at the right hand of God. But they cried out with a loud voice and covered their ears and rushed at him with one impulse. And when they had driven out of the city, they began stoning him, and the witnesses laid their robes at the feet of a young man named Saul. They went on stoning Stephen as he called on the Lord and said, Lord Jesus, receive my spirit. Then falling on his knees, he cried out with a loud voice, Lord, do not hold this sin against them. And having said this, he fell asleep. So this is one of the few occasions we actually have of a man facing his own death and facing the actual act of dying. And in doing so, I think it's interesting, he sees the Lord, cries unto the Lord Jesus, receive my spirit. He says, I see the heavens open up and the Son of Man standing at the right hand of God. So I don't know exactly what that last few minutes might be as we lay sometime in a coma-like state, what we will see and how we will react to it. You know, I told you the story of my mom as I was taking her up to see her grandkids for the last time, and she asked me, Den, when I die, what's the first thing that I'll see? And I can only rely upon what Jesus told us, and that is, I said, Mom, you'll see the angels coming for you. And I do believe that, I think, I'd like to think at least that in those last waning moments, we can almost hear the angels' wings and feel the angels gathering above us as they get ready to take us to go be with the Lord. So that's the kind of the extent of what we know or how death will come. I know personally that a great, usually a great calm and a great peace comes over those that know that they have a few minutes, a few seconds to live. I like to think that they're hearing the angels come. Recently, a great mentor of mine, Gordon Hogan, great missionary and a teacher, spent the last many years up at Harding as their one of their missionaries in residence. Had a big influence on me as a young man. And I heard that he was near death, and so I drove up and spent a little time with his family. And we stood around him. He was not conscious. And I said a prayer over him and, said, Lord, just when the time comes, send your angels. And by the time I got home, I got a message from Beth that said, well, the angels came. And that's the way I think we think about death, yes.
Is this in everybody's death or just Christians? You think everyone's going to see the angels?
Do y'all remember the movie, what was it? Maybe I'm having that senior moment. What is the name of the movie? Patrick Swayze, with Patrick Swayze in it. Ghost. And you remember the depiction when the guy, the evil guy, I think that had shot and killed him, I think, when he died or something, the demons coming and taking him and he's screaming away as they take him away to only hell knows. I don't know if that's the way it will be for those that die. In the story of the rich man and Lazarus, it says the angels came and carried Lazarus' way into Abraham's bosom, but it just says when the rich man died that he was buried. So we don't know what that will be, but I would think that it would be very frightening. When an atheist dies, what are those last few hours or minutes like? What does he have? It's got to be kind of a dreadful, fearful thing to not know what's about to happen to you. At least for us as Christians, we kind of have that knowledge. We kind of know what's going to come about and what's going to be awaiting us. And I think that's the best thing to know. Here Stephen saw Jesus standing on the right hand of God. For we as Christians, death is a very a joyful thing almost. It's a peaceful thing. It's that hope that we have. Here's what the Apostle Paul said about it. And Paul faced death many times. He was stoned once and taken up for dead. And of course he was arrested and one time and managed to be freed, but eventually Rome put him to death. But he said to the Philippians, and he wrote this from the prison, from jail cell, Philippians chapter 1, beginning at verse 21, Philippians 1, 21. He said, "But for me to live is Christ and to die is gain." Let that kind of soak in. We live for Christ. We try to be good Christians, and to die, we're going to benefit. It's going to be we're going to get an improvement. It's gain. We're going to gain something. We're not losing anything. We're gaining. Death is a way of gaining a better life. So for me, to live is Christ and to die is gain. But if I am to live on in the flesh, this will mean fruitful labor for me, and I do not know which to choose. But I'm hard pressed from both directions, having the desire to depart and to be with Christ. For that is very much better. Yet to remain on in the flesh is more necessary for your sake. So Paul was ready to go. I imagine his body was bore the scars of living the Christian life. He was persecuted by his fellow Jews, persecuted, of course, by the Romans. He was, shipwrecked. He was ready to go and to be with the Lord. It's far better. And as we begin to think about life, we have to understand that it's far better to die and to go on and to be with Jesus. And usually that's, I imagine when Paul's head was laid upon the chopping block, that he had a great peace and comfort to know that I'm ready, sharpen your axe, I'm ready to go. To die is gain, it's going to be better. And that needs to be the hope and the desire that all of us have in serving the Lord. It's interesting that with when Stephen died, it said he went to sleep. Seems to be the way that the Scriptures oftentimes addresses death, which I find interesting. When Jesus received the word that Lazarus was sick, Jesus tarried, and he said, "No, Jesus, that Lazarus is going to sleep. I go to wake him up." When the little girl, 12-year-old girl, Tabitha, died, and then Jesus came into the room, he told everybody to leave, that she's not dead, but she's just asleep. and of course they laughed at him, but then he raised her from the dead, and I imagine that those people thought, well, maybe she was just asleep. I find it interesting that the scriptures oftentimes describe death as simply going to sleep. Does that mean maybe perhaps that we talk about, we go to the Hadean realm where we wait for the coming of the Lord. Do we just go into kind of a sleep-like state? And that's why the years pass, very quickly. It's like a child, that you've got a long trip and they go to sleep in the back seat, and when they wake up, we're here. Well, they don't remember all that 6 hours of driving. It's all, it's gone. Maybe that's the way we will be awaiting for the Lord to come. I don't know, but I find it kind of interesting the way that that death is addressed oftentimes as sleep, and we are awakened, and maybe we will be awakened then by that trumpet when the Lord returns. So if that's the case, that's okay. That's fine. So it's just interesting the way that death is talked about and is discussed in the New Testament. We, in this life, we don't, in our culture and our society, we don't talk about death too much. Oh yeah, we report the murders, the TV5 News every night. It's just the first 5 things, about murder here in Memphis, sad to say. That's how we think about death, in that terms, but we don't, as a culture, our culture doesn't just tries to escape and put death as far away as we can put it. I want to share with you, really interesting. I love this little piece, if I did write it myself, but I'll just share it with you. It says, the more I've studied about heaven and the more I have learned about eternity in the spiritual world, the less attractive life here is. The more treasure I lay up in heaven, the more rusty and corroded this life becomes. Paul, who was given a glimpse into paradise, would later proclaim, I desire to depart and to be with Christ, which is far better. Well, of course it is. The problem we have in our culture is that we have found many have found their heaven here on earth. They long for the good life, aim for a long life, and seem to be content with a material life. Much of our society is overly concerned with our earthly existence. We exercise, diet, pop pills, go into debt, plan our retirement, color our hair, have our doors bolted, our lives insured, our stocks managed, our tummies tucked, and our cholesterol tested. We put warning labels on everything from cigarettes to alcohol to nail polish and trash bags, all in an effort to prevent anything from ending our lives one moment too soon. And if we are stricken with a life-threatening problem, we will undergo any test, take any medicine, seek out any experimental treatment, all in a futile effort to hang on to life another year, month, or day. Then when we are really feeling good, we drop dead. So we do just seem to put that our culture, our society, people don't want to stay as far away from death as we can stay. And I'm certainly not against us seeking to overcome illness and things for the sake of extending our lives, but to understand that someday we're going to be moving on in this world, and to make sure that we that we are planning also in making just as much of an effort to be ready for death when it comes as we are in trying to keep death from our doorstep. That we are ready and prepared to go when God calls us to know that that we have a gain on the other side. That it's much better to depart and to be with Jesus, and to understand that. And so, in the end, we need to live our life looking to death, and then we need to die looking to life, the life that we have on the other side, which is much, much better to do that and to be with the Lord and to serve Him in the way that He would have us serve Him. That too, I'm going to tell one other little story, and then I'll share one thing with you, and it will be yours. Morel Laws was a sweet lady up in Palmersville, where I preached for 4 years. By the way, when you drive your 5 miles or so to the church building here, just think I preached there for 4 years, and every Sunday I got up and drove 134.7 miles every Sunday to preach in Palmersville, because I really wanted to preach, and they gave me that chance. I get there to the building, usually it's kind of funny, I have that far to drive, but I'm always the first person at the building. But Morel Laws would be there soon thereafter. She was always the early bird to get there. She lived way out in the country. Of course, the congregation way out in the middle of nowhere anyway, but she lived out in a little wood frame house in the middle of massive cornfields. Her husband had died 2 or 3 years before I came there. She would get there, elderly lady, but raised out in the country. But the way she dressed, you would have thought she was a New York socialite. She just dressed immaculately, beautiful dresses, jewelry. You ladies, the whole works. After I left there, maybe a year later, she passed away, and her family invited me to come up and to preach her funeral, which I was honored to do so. Morel had planned her funeral. She had a teacup sitting in her windowsill in front of her kitchen sink, and she had written on paper there her what song she wanted sung, and pallbearers she wanted used, and this, that, and the other. And as far as a preacher, she had just written in there, "Whoever you all want." So I was honored that they asked me to come and hold her funeral. Afterwards, I was invited to go back to her house, and the family, had lunch there at her house, and it's right in the middle of a big cornfield. So as I'm sitting there, visiting and chatting with the family, they came to me and they showed me that little piece of paper that she had written all of her things, what she wanted. And where she had written "Whoever you all want," she had taken a pencil and she had run a line through that, and above that line she wrote "Dennis Doughty." No greater honor that I have as a preacher than to preach a funeral and to be asked to preach a funeral. And I try as best I can to highlight that person's life and to make sure that we understand the hope of eternity that person has for them. And it's I hope that all of us kind of not just plan our funeral, but plan our future after death. I make sure that we know where we're going and have that faith and confidence. I started writing poetry many years ago. I did so. I began to really study poetry, and I began to want to really learn how to do it right, and to make sure that I had I felt like it would be help me improve my writing. So I've done a lot of poetry. I don't know, 100 poems, maybe different things I've written on different topics that I have used. And so I have a poem that I wrote for the book, and I'm going to close with this poem. I wrote this, I was in the middle of writing the manuscript, and I wrote it. Kathy and I went on our usual yearly vacation down at Fort Walton Beach, and had a little condo there, and took my laptop with me, and I did some work on the manuscript while we were there that week. But I also wrote this poem while I was down there, and hope that you will enjoy it. It's called Heaven's Little Things. In heaven there will be wondrous things to do and see, glory and praise to our God and worship to Christ our King. But there'll be little things too, things unnoticed except by us few. It is these little things of heaven that I am anxious to see and do. I want to hear the deaf man sing, reach up and touch Gabriel's wing. I look at my reflection in the jasper walls and stare at my new body and be in awe. Back on earth, I wasn't this tall. Well, Mary and Martha show me to my room. Does the tree of life have a sweet bloom? I'll get Lazarus to tell me that story about the day that he came out of the tomb. I want to throw a rock with David's sling and reach up and touch Gabriel's wing. I'll chase an angel across Kidron's Creek and find my mom and kiss her cheek and thank her for teaching me to pray. Now I'll lay me down to sleep. I may be surprised to see some of my kin, but I'll see Steve, my lifelong friend, and we'll leap into the river of life and yell as we jump, "Here we go again." I like to pick the mind of Solomon the king and reach up and touch Gabriel's wing. With no watches to watch, no nights to sleep, no sadness of heart, no tears to weep, I'll enjoy all these little things in the eternal city of Christ and his sheep. And I'll walk with my God around the place. We'll talk one-on-one and face-to-face, and I'll thank him personally for the gift of his Son and for saving me by his grace. And in his outstretched arm as I cling, I'll reach up and touch Gabriel's wing. Hope all of us have that desire, and that maybe this lesson has in some way helped to inspire you to think more about heaven and think more about this wonderful journey that we have before us. This thing called death, eternal life, the hereafter, heaven, those streets of gold, that's reunion with our loved ones. There's so many things to look forward to and to be thankful for as Christians, the great hope that we have. How sad it is that in this world, so many people do not have that hope beyond the grave. And yet for us, the end is really just the beginning. Dying, it's really living. Thank you for your time. We're going to let you out just a few minutes early.